Hey everybody, Lars here with Clay Harper, race director for the Monster Energy Pro Downhill Series. Man, what an incredible year 2024 was. We just wrapped up the series a few weeks back, culminating with the Fox US Open of mountain biking,
Biggest of the
presented
season.
by Continental. It was an incredible season of racing, and the final event was just off the charts. People coming from all over the world, the vibe was off the hook. And I think everybody wants to hear, you put a lot of work into this. So what's going through your mind right now? And, what were your thoughts on the
My season end thoughts, right? So, I think everybody's got such a good, it was such a good send off, right? Like we put in a ton of work this year, our whole team and all the racers too, like everybody. And then just to end on such a good note with the US Open, it was I couldn't ask for more. The vibe was off the charts. I mean, I said it a bunch of times, and I don't have any facts to back this up, but I would say it was the biggest U.S. Open to date, right? I don't know. What do we base it on? Audience, social, the scale,
Stoke.
Number of racers, or just Stoke, right? Yeah. But if you were there on site, it was undeniable. We had 550 athletes, amateur and pro. So that was a massive turnout. Biggest of the season, obviously.
And you were turning people away.
Yeah, well, we tried to cap it at 500, but with that cap, and we're going back to our last podcast, but everybody wants to know this, so it's worth talking about. With the cap being set to try to get us to 500 with a 350 on amateurs and figuring how many we'll have in the pro class, with the U.S. Open, it bubbles up a little bit at the end because we do some unique things. We have a free rider class, which was wild. I mean, we should... it's funny, in our pre-race, our pre-podcast notes, we didn't even talk about that. Yeah. But the athletes in that, and then you get some pro athletes that show up out of the blue at the end, and then we also had to get all of our points leaders in there. So it wound up with almost 550 racers at the end, which is a lot to bring down the hill in a day.
And a lot of talent too. I mean, the amount of riders that came from overseas or countries other than the U.S. was unbelievable. I mean, we had well over 100 riders from outside the U.S. total. Well over, because there was 55 plus just in the men's pro class.
Yeah, and we had a lot of amateurs from out of the country. That's a new trend, which is cool because they're turning into pros that are coming to this country, they're coming to this continent to race. But the number of pros, number of amateurs, just a straight amateur team from the UK that came over. That's pretty cool. Ton of Canadians. Canadian turnout was probably the biggest we've ever seen. I feel like every bike racer from British Columbia was here, which was cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, turnout amazing. The track was really fun. It's always such a gamble for me, in my mind, for us to run that Goat Skull track. Call a spade, right? We try to run on being forthcoming and honest and talking about things, even if they're not great for us. And that track, isn't the most ideal stats on paper. It's kind of flat. It's kind of lacks a little bit of the technical stuff that a lot of people would look for. But we always have a great race on it. And the crew at Killington turned that thing up, man. That section with the step down into the whoops was wild. I've never seen, in the 3 years we've been running this track, we've never had that kind of concentration of people out in the open, in that field in the sun watching like that. What did you think of the track?
I thought the track was sick. Obviously, I'm an East Coaster, so I love East Coast dirt. I love East Coast tracks. There's always a lot of roots and rocks. Some steeper than others, but there's just a lot. There's a lot to them. A lot of technicality to most tracks on the East Coast. Yeah. But also, I love New England in the fall. The foliage was insane. The dirt was. It started muddy at the early part of the week, and it turned into the best hero dirt for race day. And the whoops, obviously being a part of it, a part of your team, and a part of following what's going on social media, there was a lot of comments and talk about whoops, and you could tell everyone that had something negative to say about the whoops were the people that weren't there. So because every rider was like, these things are sick, and it does require an art, a skill to get through them quick. You don't have a throttle to skim.
No, but let's talk about that for a second. So you're right. So the Pro Downhill Series whoops, right? That kind of became a thing this year, which is
It
almost
just kept getting bigger and bigger at every race too.
But it's almost
it started with a couple at
Like
a couple shovel marks at Rock Creek to a short little whoop section before that little
Mountain
step
Creek,
up at Mountain Creek to a legit bona fide whoop section that was actually pretty, created a ton of hype.
I think the Snow Summit ones were the hardest to ride. I think so.
Yeah, it could be. Yeah.
And then ultimately what we wound up with at Killington. But it's almost cliche because we talk about how Monster Energy Pro Downhill Series, we're closer to motocross than we are to cycling.
Yeah.
And then we're the guys out here being like, there's whoops in mountain biking, right? So it stirred the shit on Pink Bike, right? And which really ended pretty much all doubts when they posted that viral clip of Richie Rude riding through the whoops where he just floats in the middle.
Yeah.
But there's a story behind it. So the whoops in mountain biking in general are a super controversial topic. There's been so many attempts, I think the most infamous one is was it in Cairns in had to be the mid-teens, where that one athlete got hurt, and then a guy from can't remember who it was, but then a guy from the stands grabs their bike and tries to ride it, and a fan gets broke off in the whoops, and it was there's just everything about it was kind of messy. And then fast forward, we had at Rock Creek, we had a pretty wild set of whoops for a few years there. It was 5 or 6 of them, and they were big. They scared the shit out of me personally, as a rider, right? Yeah. And then Mountain Creek, a couple of years ago, we started to develop around the 17 U.S. Open. We started to really develop the whoops and get them more rideable there. And then it just kind of is a thing where people are like, oh, what should they look like? And then this year, we kind of just wound up focusing on it. And it wasn't something we set out ahead of time to do at all. It was perfectly organic. And the Mountain Creek ones were slower and taller, but it was okay. It worked because of the situation they were in.
Right,
Like you say, it had a wall at the end of it, which was cool. That claimed some people.
Yep.
But then you go to Snow Summit, and I worked with the team out there, and we kind of changed it to where you're really ramped up the speed, because we figured out that that's the key is you don't have a throttle. So how do we get that float? If you're not going to be able to float through the whoops, they suck and they're dangerous. So we really ramped up the speed coming into them there, but I think we still had them probably a little bit too spaced. And so when we got to Killington, we started doing the build process with the team there, and full disclosure, they built a set of whoops. And we went and they built them to what we asked for, and we went and tried them, and we were just ugh. My son, the test pilot, Zach, poor kid, he pretty much had his brain scrambled holding on in those things. He didn't crash, but it was going through, and then we had a real kind of tough moment. And I've had a lot of these with build teams at mountains over the years. 2019 with the US Open crew at Snow Summit was just picture me and our team and the build crew standing out there, and obviously we don't agree on what's happened, and they've already done work and we need to make changes. And so for the Killington whoop section, I said, let's just pull them. I don't think we know what we're doing with this, because the dirt was hard to get right. More topsoil than what we had worked with in the past. And to Taylor Zink's credit, the trail crew director there, he says to me, he's like, nope, I want to do this. Give us another shot. What should they look like? What is the exact dimensions? And my son, we were on the dual slalom track, and they had built this weird whoop in one of the berms, and it was like a drainage piece. And he was standing there when we were having the conversation, because we're over on that side of the mountain. He's just like, that's what it should look like. We took the measurements of it,
Yeah.
and we put it on I took pictures of him on his e-bike hitting this, and we took it over to the other side of the mountain, and they replicated it, and it worked perfect. And the trick is smaller and axle to axle on the troughs and the tops of the whoops, so that you can get up and stay on top of them. And you have to build it where speed is rewarded. The faster you go, the better off you are.
It was interesting hearing a lot of the riders, because obviously every installment of the Pro Downhill series had nuances to the whoops.
Big time,
You
yeah.
just talked us through all of it. And a lot of the riders at the US Open were like, kind of didn't want to they don't want to show their cards on what their approach is going to be, because they were really important there, because you talked about this on the live race coverage. There wasn't a lot going on right after it. So your exit speed out of the whoops, I mean, the whoops were probably race time less than a second, right? From the time you enter to the time you exit. But that they could cost you probably a full second and a half or 2 seconds.
In the couple hundred feet after it, yeah.
Yes, because coming out of it, you just had...
Also, I would say going into it too, because the athletes, the racers that got the most time gained out of the backside of the whoops meant that they were pedaling into them too. So they were also picking up, whereas if you hesitated, it was like the classic hesitation kills.
But it was kind of cool, Dak, he's like, I tried to jump the whole entire thing. You know what I mean? He's like, I probably tried that too early, because then others saw it. He's like, I let my secret out. I kept the cat out of the bag. So.
Yeah, when you see some of the clips of the pro men going through that, it's I didn't watch everybody in practice or even qualies, and I was kind of shocked the first person I saw try to jump it. I was thinking to myself, that's not a good idea, but they made it work, and it looked perfect. Yeah. And they also we went back up and took measurements at the end after the race with the crew to replicate it next year. And where they got to at the end of the race was actually the best, because they had just been beaten down enough to where they got to this place where they just rode very well. Yeah. And there was a couple crashes. The only real bad crash I saw on the whoops was kind of a technical malfunction. One racer had a shoe pedal malfunction, something broke, and so he basically unclipped in the middle of the whoops, and that was a big crash. But other than that, I didn't see too much. I saw people crashing for going too slow. It's a medium speed, real slow or real fast or good. That medium speed ate some.
I mean,
wheels.
End of the day, I think they still added a ton to the vibe, you know, and the other piece of the vibe that was ridiculous, just to kind of deflect off into a different direction, and then we'll get back, because I mean, I know we want to talk a little bit about how big the event was, because you mentioned that early, but the vibe too, the whip off. Holy smokes, that was sick. Yeah. The amount of people on both sides, it felt like, it felt like the old glory days where, there's just walls and walls of people, so much positive energy, so much stoke.
I think they estimated somewhere between 2,000 and 3,000 people standing around that. Spectators standing around that night. Again, to Killington's credit, they built that jump. They put that all together, and similar to the whoops, we had a couple iterations of the build, and then they had weather issues, and they made some not last minute, a week or two before, changes to it, and it came out great in the end, and it worked. And we ran a pretty flawless best whip contest, which was cool. And just everybody should know, we kind of handed the keys to that to Killington to set it up and do it. It's with the scale of the Pro Downhill Series now, and just the straight financial requirements of us to run a full series and insure a full series and do all that. The side stuff gets really tough, running a best whip and bringing in an outside builder to build all that. It's tough, it's just financial strain on us. We're so focused on trying to put on the best downhill race we can. But Killington sees a ton of value in that Saturday night best whip, and they stepped up and really took that and ran with it.
It really does help, just the vibe of the whole US. The US Open has always had this killer vibe, and that whip kind of the whole just the energy.
Well, something crazy happens every time. Honestly, the craziest thing that happened at this one was the syrup ceremony at the end.
Love to see how that's evolved.
Oh, that kid. Camden, that's how you say his name? Yeah, just absolutely, there was some controversy in the win on the men's side of that with a lot of people in like the Levi camp, like Levi Heritage, people were chanting his name and stuff. And honestly, if I was a judge, I couldn't have picked. Like, it was almost a flip of a coin. Yeah. I think they had a few little metrics like bringing it back, or maybe who had the most amplitude on one jump. They had one way they wound up picking him, but I'd say for the way he turned out, hyping the crowd afterwards, and I mean the kid was hyped. It was really rad. Yeah. It was good. And then to continue on just the vibe conversation, dude, the finish corral at the end of the race.
Yeah, I was gonna, and yeah, I mean, the race was awesome.
Good
and
race.
The quality and the quantity of quality athletes at the U.S. Open was off the charts.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that maybe to scale, you could say like the early days of the U.S. Open were similar, but the sport was so much smaller.
Yeah.
To me, it felt like the biggest ever.
Yeah, I mean, it's easy for me to be excited in a finish line corral because I'm kind of like have the privilege of being like right in there and feeding off the energy. Like riders are coming across the line. You could literally feel the tension with Dak. Like he's sitting on the hot seat. He just threw down a killer run, and we're all looking at him. There's a ton because it's a domestic race. Dak's got this huge following of fans. They want to see the U.S. guy take down all the like world's fastest.
Yeah.
But there is the wild card. There's all these guys that like a lot of the local racers don't have an opportunity to see on a regular basis. So they're like, oh, Dak's got this one.
Yeah.
But no, you can't rule it.
Dude, he said he said something really cool to me right at the finish. As soon as Lockie came across the line, Dak has really grown into like a pretty like calculated, well-spoken pro. Like he's something I always like listen to him talk right after a race. And he just walked up to me and I gave him a hug and I was like, good race, And he's like, it's better for the event if I don't win again. He goes, looks fishy if I keep winning. Or he said something like that, and I was like, I mean, I guess it just cost you like $7,500, but sure, thanks. So I appreciate everything that every one of those athletes brings to that. The level of like just energy in that finish corral. It just starts right with the end of the women's race, and then goes right into the end of the men's race, and the way all the athletes stand in the corral now, and we got a pretty special thing going with that.
Yeah, I mean, look. We can go through the results in a minute, but there's a lot of money. You just kind of mentioned the prize purse. I mean, you're looking at on the day, $15,000 for the win. That's big money. That's like real money, and you figure $15,000 for 3 minutes of work, like figure out the hourly rate on that one. I don't know. My math is
2.5 minutes.
Yeah. So,
for
right. For Lockie. Yeah. So, what's your time worth, right? It's, all that work you put in preseason and stuff pays off right then. But that's a big deal. And even, like anywhere on a podium, you're coming home with thousands, so.
And it's just the hallmark of the event. And it's something we've been doing since day one, and something, we're working hard to do bigger and better. It's just a long, slow process. Like it's not easy. We paid out $65,000 or so on that weekend. That's hard to do.
Yeah,
I'll tell you, it's hard to do.
Absolutely. And I know, just coming from like your standpoint, when you go in all season long and, you see what you're putting out and what you're putting in, like it's props to you,
Yeah. I mean, we put out over $100,000 in prize money this season for downhill. Like that's sick. Like, over 4 races, not over a big season either. So I think it's just a foundational point of the series. It's something that we do. It's like non-negotiable for us.
Yeah.
Which is behind the scenes. It's not always easy, for sure. But it'll get better, and it gets easier, and brands see the value in it. And it's to go fundamentals, like our sport doesn't talk enough about the money. Like look at another sport you follow, like they talk about the money. It's part of the allure of professional athletes. And if they're not making much money, it's not worth talking about, obviously, but that's what we're here to change. And that's something that we want to just continue. Like, maybe like the 2030 US Open, it'll be 50 grand on the podium, right? Now that's crazy.
Yeah.
That's a life changer.
We did, I know when we were prepping for the post-race coverage, we were kind of talking about, and for the press conference, et cetera, we were kind of talking about like what's the highest paying single event in the sport of mountain biking and in the sport of downhill racing. And it's pretty much side by side with the highest paying event in the sport of downhill racing. So we're already right there. So, you know,
it's
keep liking, sharing, following, and maybe we can make that claim that it'll be the highest paying single event in the
make
sport
those
of
sponsor
downhill
reports
mountain
look better.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was, but overall, the U.S. Open was it was knockout, man. I couldn't tell the average person how much, you know, our crew and we all like the stress and sweat, right? It's literally stress and sweat. That's what we put into it. But it turned out great, and it was well received. The global response to it was huge. It really was. The whole season's been that way, but this really tipped it off, you know?
Yeah, and one of the cool things, I mean, it's just another added element to the whole season is that the Fox US Open of mountain biking is the season finale for the Monster Energy Pro Downhill Series. And because of the huge paychecks that come with the US Open, I mean, the Pro Downhill Series have meaty paychecks as well, but it's kind of on another level for the US Open. You get a lot of wild cards, you get a lot of athletes in there, and it made for an really exciting season end for the Pro Downhill Series as well.
Yeah, it definitely did. But let's talk a little bit about the racing. So, like, you know, the U.S. Open downhill race itself. Like, before we talk about the overall, right? Like, so the on the day event. You know, to start here, where I feel like when we started this podcast, we used to not need to have our laptops and everything. We had everything memorized. Now we just got too much stuff in our brains. We can't do it. But, like, you know, Lockie, like, you know, coming in with a 2:38 to knock Dakota out at the end and take that men's pro win was, you know, something for the U.S. Open history books. Yeah. And when you look at the times right now, like I am, you know, like we go back to 5th place, right? So, like, Luca, you got, well, actually, we go back to 6th place, 4 riders, all within the same second. You know what I mean? And 3 of them within the same 100th, you know, or 10th rather. So, like, to then, you know, have Dakota come in and take it by a full second, and you're like, oh, that's impressive. And then somewhere, and this is the thing, to go back to talking about the track, like how Lockie put a whole nother 2 seconds in the field on that track is pretty impressive. You know, I wish we had the technology for showing the side-by-side and where that was won and lost in the race. But, I mean, you know, he had basically, just looking at the splits, I mean, he took Dakota just a little bit on each split. I mean, I guess it was the overall, you know, the biggest difference would be that 3 seconds in the 3rd split. But I don't know necessarily how he did it. I couldn't tell you. I don't know. But it was impressive.
Yeah, I don't know where he found that much speed. He was just operating on another level, and he went right into the next round of the race season.
I think he wanted to buy a new dirt bike.
Yeah.
Rolled right into Mount St. Anne, like,
and just lit it up.
Still on it,
again. Yeah. Yep.
It's weird how that works. It's the same in moto. Like, when you're on, you're on.
Yeah.
You know, and that goes back to the mental side of it too. I think that you just put a dent in your competitor's psyche.
Yeah.
You know?
And you also, when your own head is strong and you're focused on just doing what you can do, and all of a sudden you get that belief and, you know, the feeling of invincibility almost, because you need that to be rolling at that level. You need to feel that invincibility. Like,
confidence is king. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Like, all these guys, same amount of time in the gym, same amount of time on the trainer, same amount of time on the e-bike doing laps. They're all doing the training, and they're all, like, hard to kind of tell apart when you watch them ride. But
Yeah.
it comes down to that mental edge at the end. So, yeah, and then
I mean, but it's funny just looking at the results. 6 different countries in the top 7 finishers. So just the caliber of athlete that this event drew.
you got New Zealand, USA, Ireland, Spain, USA, Great Britain, Australia, USA, Ireland, Great Britain, Canada, like just rolling down through the top, and some really cool results in here too to look at, like Richie Rude and Aaron Gwynn both in the top 10.
Yep.
That's, first of all, Gwynn's comeback this year was something cool to see. I felt
cool.
Yeah, I felt honored to have him at the Open. It was really cool to see him back, and doing that. But then, to see Richie just kind of like casually throw it up a top 10 there, like he's such a quiet guy. You don't know what kind of day he's gonna have, and honestly, he was not that far out. Like it was so tight. I mean, you look at the second he was in, there was another 4 riders in that second too.
Yep.
So.
Yeah.
That was really cool to see. I think that, you can go back and even see some really surprising things too, like seeing a Greg Menard in 22nd and like a Mark Wallace in 20th, like some big names,
Mm-hmm.
But again, we don't know exactly how everybody's run went. So there usually is, some people get caught in the pitfalls of underestimating that goat skull track, which always happens. So
Yeah, but again, I mean, we did talk a lot about the sections of the woods that were lacking in pitch. And, if you don't get, like, one wrong pump could cost you quarter second, half a second right there, and you do that twice, and there's a whole second.
100%.
Exiting the whoops. If you get the golden light shines down on you and you exit, and you exit just like a quarter of a mile an hour faster, like that's the difference between another half a second. So,
and there's also, worth noting too, like, excuse me, like some of these athletes, like, we're pretty honest about it. And I love this, like, whether it's press conference or it's Win TV, which is like, Win TV is like what did I call it? It's like an all event long press conference, which I love it, like, and to hear, guys like Ronan Dunn and a few of these other guys just flat out be like, look, I don't jive with this track. It's too flat. And that's a real thing. I think athletes need to be able to race every track.
Yeah.
Sometimes, got to keep your opinion to yourself and just try to throw down. But when you're, a guy like Ronan, who is a contender for the win in every race he's in, and he finds himself, in 10th, clearly, says flat out, like, hey, I was struggling to find speed. I couldn't find speed on this track.
That sometimes goes into the mental game too.
Yeah.
Like if you say that to yourself before race day, that's in your mind, right?
Yeah.
So there's going to be some little subliminal, subconscious thing like that. You're not going to be driving quite as hard as the person who's saying, I feel really good on this track, So
Yeah.
big part of it.
Yeah. And was there any results that surprised you? Anything in there that absolutely surprised you?
No, I mean, I know we're not getting into the Pro Downhill Series overall yet, but I think, and I wouldn't say it's a surprise, but the one result that it was kind of like the highlight for me as well, like we were talking earlier about, what was the highlight of the season, was I was really anxious to see who would step up on top of the box between Allie and Eris.
Oh, yeah.
Because the pro women's field for the season long came right down to the U.S. Open. They were 2 points apart. They're swapping top spots on the podium all season long. And literally, whoever beat one another in that final race, even if it was by one position, was going to take the series. So that one was pretty exciting.
And just to look at the women's, the whole women's field, respect where respect is due. Nina Hoffman pretty much owns the U.S. Open these days. Like, she didn't have to give me the Dakota line. She didn't have to let somebody else win, right? But I think that, to me, one of the most impressive things that I saw was Aletha's time in this field.
Yeah.
Like for a 16-year-old, that's wild.
It's
Less, she's a third of a second behind the win. I mean, she almost took the win.
I know.
And she beat Nina I think she beat her in sectors 3 and 4. Sector 3 anyway.
She was 2 seconds up on Nina at the third split.
Yeah.
And I know, I think at the press conference Nina talked about coming on clip. We saw it in the race coverage as well. I think that's what happened. I think she came on clip and lost some drive, and she talked about how deep she had to dig at the end, which clearly was the case. But, both Allie and Louise Ferguson were Allie was in the top spot at split 3, and Louise Ferguson was 0.2 of a second behind her.
Well, I mean, their finish times 3:06.22 to 3:06.53. I mean, that's less than 0.3 away from each other. Which, I mean, that's like how far you push the bike forward at the line. You know what I mean? It's so so negligible almost. So, it was really cool to see Kaylee Skelton on the podium too.
Yeah,
I was. I had high hopes for her in this race. Like, I was stoked to see her deliver.
Yeah,
she's kind of had a rough season. You know, it started with that crash at
Rock Creek.
Gosh, that was bad.
And she was dominating.
Yeah.
All weekend at Rock Creek.
I'll say this. Like, and I know Kaylee pretty well. I feel like, we may have just created the home for racing that she was looking for. Like, I don't think she loves like traveling outside the country to race too much. I mean, and I'm speaking for her, but like, she was not that hyped on racing from what I could tell, the last year before the Pro Downhill Series started. And I don't know what training she did. I don't know what mental secret she unlocked in her head or whatever it was, but she came out swinging, and like, I really enjoyed watching that. Like, she's such like an all-American pro, if you will.
Yeah.
It's like,
I have a feeling we'll see a lot of her next year on top of the podium. She was definitely on point at Big Bear as well.
Yep.
But again, just like Rock Creek, it was like an unfortunate race run where things didn't go as planned. But all week long, she was on fire.
I think she literally found so much speed that these two incidences we're talking about, it was almost like her speed caught her. Like, I think she hit that jump at Rock Creek at a speed that was, just above her normal, like what she'd been doing up to that point. And, maybe that was a factor on why she went down. But like I'm here for it. Like, I want to see her continue to go faster because, she represents like a lot of cool things for the Pro Downhill Series, right? Yeah. Like, you look at her Instagram, like when she's not riding, she's surfing, she's driving these old trucks around and stuff like that.
Her truck's awesome.
Yeah, like such a cool character to have on the podium.
For sure. So any other race results kind of stand out for you at that final installment at the U.S. Open?
I think in the pro race, no. I think, it was just a great race. I think, if we go back and we look down the line a little bit, right? Like, so 17, 18, the men's, that was an interesting one, with Christian Hauser in there. So, he's an accomplished racer. Like, he's made waves on the World Cup circuit this year. He's pro, arguably, and it was funny because this kind of brings up something else I want to talk about. The U.S. Open has historically been the chance for, like, you get in that open class. Like a kid like Cash Shalene would get in the open class at the U.S. Open. But this year with the series points race, we mixed that up. Like, we definitely changed things, which made the 15, 16, and 17, 18 races really good.
Yeah.
Whereas they might not always be so great at the U.S. Open because a lot of the talent will move up to the open class.
Right.
I personally was nervous about that. I was unhappy that we created that situation. It was definitely not something that was architected in the beginning. It was kind of halfway through the season was like oh shit, you know what? This is what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And it really, really didn't matter. Like, we had great racing and it was cool. But Christian Hauser is somebody who I would have thought would have gone in the open class. And there was you know, I guess, you know, in talking with his team, just like some confusion. They didn't know that like it was an option, like, right? They'd never been to the U.S. Open. So he wound up sticking in the 17, 18, and I could hear like some grumblings from the other athletes, and, you know, just like he was going to really mix up the points race. You know, like he's there to just kind of like wreck everybody's day, if you will. But when you look at the results, dude, Ryder Lawrence, you know, right there, not far off Christian. You know, Christian took the win, like we said. But Ryder Lawrence, Max Abrams, Jack Sononi, like the big dogs of that age group were all right there with him. So like, I think that was a good day for those guys. Like, you know, for a kid like Jack Sononi to see that he's, you know, within striking distance of a Christian Auger is really cool. I think that worked out really well at the end, and I was worried it was going to be like more of a walk-away win, just based on, you know, what we were feeling coming into it. But a great race in that category, and we'll talk about this in a minute, but, you know, I didn't realize that Jack Sononi, I didn't process this till just now. Max Abrams, third place, Jack Sononi, fourth place. But Jack still managed to eke out the series overall. That's pretty cool. 6 points, I think it was. We'll come back to that. So, you know, and then the Cat 1 women's 17-18, I was like, it was kind of a lesser turnout, but I think that group is, you know, weird pivotal point right now, kind of a moment in time where we're seeing a much larger 15-16 group. And then a lot of those 17-18s, like they just went to pro already. Exactly. So it's like, it's a weird spot, you know, where I never know what to expect in that, but, you know, Charlie Bernard put a second into Sarah Ligman, just looking at this now, but, you know, it didn't hurt Sarah, right? Sarah took the overall, so it still worked out, but like definitely... She
had a strong season.
Yeah, definitely. She had a strong season, but, you know, again, somebody coming in to potentially rain on her parade. So, and then we go down and we look at these 15, 16, and like everybody knows this is my favorite age group to watch. On the women's side, you know, Cammie Bragg coming in and just doing damage. Like, you know, it was impressive. You know, she wound up taking that BOA award too. It was good. It was a very good, like, just showing for her overall. We got her in the press conference. Like, I think it definitely was like, what's the word to use? Like, just a real awareness. Like, she put herself on the map, I think, in a lot of people's minds. So that was good. Kaylee Stewart hanging on in third in that, enough to get it done for the season. That was a good race, you know, and 9 girls in that one, which is a good group in that age category for us at the U.S. Open. And then the boys 15, 16, right? Like, what can you say about that? Like,
that's been a fun group of riders to watch this season for sure.
You know, and Cash getting it done again, fourth USO win in a row for him. He won twice in the 13, 14, and twice in the 15, 16, right? So he's on his fourth win. He asked me if anybody else has done that, and I was like, I don't think so. I don't know if that's a stat we haven't checked, you know?
Yeah.
We need to start doing better, keeping stats like that now that the series is going to go on, but it's impressive. You know,
but to your point earlier, it's these kind of stats are going to be kind of creating themselves now, because in early years of U.S. Open, there was 2 categories per gender, open and pro, and no age. You know, then I think maybe there was a junior at the very beginning.
Yeah,
but you did add a junior early on, because I know Nico won the junior.
Not in the first year, though. But yeah,
not in the first year. I think the first year was 2 classes. It was open, and it was amateur.
Yeah.
For male, and open and amateur for female.
Yeah.
And that was it.
Yeah.
So you couldn't really break it up. I believe maybe like 05, something like that, Nico won junior. Or no, he won the amateur. It wasn't junior, it was just amateur.
Yeah, I think Nico won the amateur.
And then he went on to win the pro twice.
2017 and 18.
Yeah, so he might be he's up there. Jill Kintner has a bunch of U.S. Open wins.
Yeah, we'll have to eventually go and pull all the stats. I'm a big fan of We Went Fast, which is like a moto statistician group. Clinton Fowler, he and I recently just exchanged some emails. I hopefully can get some sort of a stats going, right? It's not easy. First of all, it takes time, and it takes money and it takes effort. But we want to start to really catalog those stats and make them easier, because with the U.S. Open just happening once a year and kind of some gray areas in between when, like I wasn't involved for a while and then it didn't happen for a few years and we got some lost data, Mountain Bike Action has asked us for some old data and some old photos. And I was like, we need to like go and get those photos back and get that data back. So
I might know some people to reach out to.
Yeah, it's a long time coming. Project for the winter. Yeah. But anyway, so the interesting thing about the boys 15-16 is, Ryder Wilson showing up and just kind of getting in the middle and wrecking wreaking some havoc with the results. But Nick coming in third, I think if I remember correctly, I feel like Nick had some challenges that weekend too. I think he went down. I can't remember if that was the Big Bear race or the U.S. Open, but I know he was, he's a fast kid and he was facing some challenges on his own, like from crashes and stuff. And then, all the usual suspects like Cohen Bundy, Luke Malin, Owen Bailey, and then you got Camden Rutherford and Jack McCready, Canadians or New Zealanders and Canadians sneaking in there. Shout out to Zach Harper. I got to do this. So Zach's, my son Zach's favorite or his thing for this season. So Zach's goal for this season was to just be in the top half, right? He's first year in Cat 1 15-16, which is such a stacked class. It's huge. And you're the freshman, you got the senior, the varsity, the 16-year-olds, some of them who are, really dominant. And his goal was just always try to be in the top half, and next year, try to do better. And top 10 in the most stacked field.
Yeah, he threw down a really impressive run.
And to his credit, the kid probably put in a 40-hour work week, Sunday through Wednesday, leading into it, and he stays in a condo with a bunch of event workers. He's up at night. That whole crew, I'll come back to it, I guess, but
it's exhausting, trying to piss your dad off, trying to keep up with the smack talk at the dinner table.
Dude, our crew is tough. I guess we'll just hit it right now, right? So leading into the U.S. Open, we wound up with Sully Notaro and Zach and Kai Burleson, just all, in our condo, and Colton Hubbard was there too. He's in the 17-18 class, but all just there to hang out, do a little riding and help. And those boys were up at 6 a.m. in the pouring rain out there with Corey, our foreman, up on top of the hill getting shit done. And then to all still put in gnarly race runs.
Yeah.
Gnarly race runs.
It's a good crop, that for sure.
Yeah, but I don't know if everybody could do that. I love it. These kids are here for it, and they're tough as hell. Just a weird moment in the race for me was Kai Burleson's run, and I got so much respect for this kid. He's he's similar to my son, and his dad's his dad's kind of like a titan in the industry too. His dad is big time at Troy Lee Designs. He's been in the business a while, and he's highly respected, and that adds pressure to a kid. My son gets it a little bit. If you listen to Jack, just did a quick Vital interview with Zach, which was pretty cool, up at MSA of all places, and he talks about it a little. But Kai, I actually wanted to see. I don't even know where he wound up in the end. What was his finish? I mean, it was.
He came down with a helmet full of blood,
a
broken nose.
Yeah, I mean, it was pretty crazy. Yeah. He was way at the back of the pack. So tough day for the kid. But man, he worked so hard that week. Would not back off. You know what I mean? There was, I think it was Wednesday night. was it? Yeah, Wednesday night. So it was pouring rain because Thursday was the real rainy day for us. Track walk was rain.
Yeah.
So Wednesday night, pouring rain. Our crew was at the top of the hill trying to get the branding on the start house. It's like one of these last minute tasks, right? It's not operational, it's aesthetics. And he's up there with him, and this storm rolls in. It's pouring rain. It's dark. They got like a cell phone light and tools, and they're up there in a side by side with no jackets, and they stayed as long as they could. And they came down, and I was like, all right, that's when we really try to cut these boys loose. Like, no more work. You guys concentrate on your race. Like, we appreciate all the help. And next morning, I'm up early every morning. I'm like the first person up in the condo usually, and he's gone. 5:45 in the morning, the kid's gone, and he's up on top of the mountain with Corey again. Like I said, like in the pouring rain, finishing the job. I just got so much respect for that. And then in his race run, he wanted that win so bad. Like, he was pushing so hard, and I honestly can't remember where he said he went down. I feel like it was a kind of a half-assed story. Like, I don't think he really remembered it when he told us, but I tried to get a picture. But it just was like a bad time, and I don't know if any of the photographers did, but he came across the line with just like full bloody mouth and nose, right? Like he had gone down and I think cracked his helmet and
The
blooded his
goggle
nose.
lenses were covered in blood. Like, it
goggle
was
lenses.
amazing he could even see through them.
And he was like so upset. He was way more upset than he was hurt, and I was just like, dude, that's racing, man. It's a tough day, but like, good on you. You finished the run, and that's where you really see like that they're 15 and 16. And like, that was hard for him to process, and like, but he did a great job, and he moved through it, and like 20 minutes later, I'm in the corral, and I look down on my hand, and I got like his blood on the back of my hand, and I was like, damn, I was like, that was pretty bad. Yeah. But shout out to that kid, like, he deserved more on that day, to see him at the back of the pack there with a bad run, that kind of was a heartbreaker.
Yeah.
So, and then one last thing I think to talk about on results, because we try to stick to just talking about these premier amateur classes. Mac Manietta, the 13-14 kid. This kid's a phenom. Broke the 3-minute mark, 2:54. Would have put him in, I think, 6th or 7th in the 15-16 Cat 1. And I'm pretty sure he's racing age 13. I think he's got a whole nother year in that class. I'm pretty sure I got to check that, but great kid. Work ethic, like a training and work ethic like I've never seen in a kid before. Awesome. I know his family pretty well, and just shout out to that kid too. Like, that was wildly impressive. So, any other moments from the race that stuck out to you?
I think you pretty much covered it. It's there's so much to talk about it. We could spend days. But
yeah.
It's
someday we'll get to the point where we can do like a quick, just like race stats only podcast, maybe right after the event. But like, dude, it's weeks since the event. I'm traveling, you're traveling, we got kids, and we're trying to get together and do like this summary podcast.
Yeah. But super cool, and obviously culminated into the series and results for that weekend. I know it added a lot of spice to the game of trying to figure things out, because there were so many people at that final round that weren't at the first three. Yeah. So, we're all kind of sitting at the edge of our seats seeing how it would shake out.
Call them dream wreckers.
Yeah, exactly. It's a good way to put it.
Show up to wreck some stuff.
Yeah, but let's talk a little bit about the Pro Downhill Series overall.
Yeah, I feel like this is your story to tell too, because I'm usually running around, right? And you get to spend every race like with these athletes as they're like moving up and down in the points in that finish corral, and have those conversations with them. So like, what was your thought on Dante and Aletha's pro wins?
All right, we'll start with Dante. What a fun personality, like, just throughout the season. After every race, he just came to the press conferences chock full of energy, so stoked, chasing a bag of cash, just like killer energy.
He's my favorite cartoon character.
That's a great way to describe it. Just killer energy, so stoked on the series, so stoked on what you're doing, wanted to be there for it.
We're lucky to have him racing with us.
I think it meant a lot to him to get it, so it was really cool to see that. He kind of came on early and stayed on, right? So, he held on to it. I know, Cole was close there, on his heels, but I think Dante was just kind of on and stayed on. Austin was in there throughout the beginning, and then we were talking before the U.S. Open just about Pinkerton, who wasn't at one of the earlier rounds, or
Yeah, I don't know. I think that Pinky would have been hard pressed. He would have been
Mountain Creek, but
yeah, he missed Mountain Creek, but he would have been. So the tally at the end, just I pulled this up here. So Dante 157 with kind of a commanding win then over Cole and Ryan at the end. So 128 for Cole and then 121 for Pinky and for Ryan Pinkerton. And honestly, I assume he's okay with us calling him Pinky. Everybody else does.
yeah.
I've become such a big fan of that kid too. All these guys, like they're such good characters too. But
For sure.
But I had actually, I thought that we were going to see a surprise out of Pinky at this race. Like I was thinking, I would not have been shocked if he landed himself on the USO podium because he's such a powerhouse, and that track rewarded power. So I didn't get to catch up with him. I would love to hear about his run, hear how that went. Like if it was a good run and the field was just so stacked, or if he had some sort of hang up, maybe I have to go back and look at some splits on that. But it was definitely second was within reach of him. I mean, there's only one trophy, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Pinky was just on that. Had there not been such a stacked field at the USO, he was just on that tail end of the bubble, like by, again, like a second. And, that put him where it was. But it was a strong performance. And then, it did give him enough to knock Austin down into the fourth spot. And it was kind of cool seeing Dylan Conti staying in the top five.
Yeah, Mr. East Coast. Well, you
he's
like
a coach
him. Yeah, you like him, though, because he's keeping that East Coast dream alive, right?
Well, he's also just such an awesome guy.
Dude, he is now...
He's just such an awesome guy.
I mean, I think you could say he's a pillar of the sport now.
Yeah,
with what
he's still like a teenage kid to me, but he's like a
sure
veteran.
Pretty sure he's in his 30s. But
he's in his 30s. Yeah. I know, but in my mind space, he's still one of the young guns. But he's not. He is definitely a staple, and he's investing so much. And like you are with the race series, he's doing it as a coach.
There's a handful of guys, and end of season podcast here worth mentioning. There's like Dylan, and then Tyson with Outlaws, and Corey with Gravity Academy, and there's plenty more. I'm not going to go deep, but those three popped up right away that are doing just so much with the youth, which we talk about how awesome this 15-16 category is and how awesome the numbers are we're seeing and all that, but it's we're building a series, you and I are building a series and a place for them to compete, but these dudes are finding these kids and getting them, making them accomplished riders, you know what I mean? Giving them programs, teaching them all the ins and outs of it. And a lot of it too, respect to these guys for teaching these kids decorum too. All the kids in our series are just cool characters and sick little kids. Love, you love talking to them all in the corral.
Yeah.
And credit to their coaches for, respect, especially Tyson. I know Tyson does a ton of work with that, how you conduct yourself and within his team structure, they even have things I think there's social credits almost for time volunteered, and they do work with a soup kitchen out in Salt Lake and some different things like that. It's really cool.
And I mean, the talent, the caliber of rider on that team, that, it's just really cool. I mean, they all seem to just really gel well with one another. They do,
and they all seem to
feed off one another. They elevate one another.
And they could all show up at a free ride contest or a race. Yeah, that's what are we doing here?
Yeah,
so,
no doubt. The going on just the series overall, just the pro women too. I think we commented on it a little bit earlier as well, but that was the most exciting battle through the year for me, because there was no one dominant athlete in the pro women's category. It was, there were a lot of great riders, but the battle for first and second between two-time junior world champion Eris and Ali Osgard, they were just, battling all season long. And to me, it was like really exciting just to see.
Well, it was also one of our best points chases, right? So it was 8 points. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
2 points separated them before the finals. So
Yeah.
really, it was down to just who did better than the other.
yeah, and their split between them at the U.S. Open is really interesting. Like again, I wish I had talked more with Eris to figure out what her run was like, but that was the furthest we've ever seen them away from each other in results.
Yeah, we talked a little bit about it on the last podcast, but about just the fact that if you treated the first 3 installments of the Pro Downhill Series as an enduro, there was 0.6 seconds separating them
Insane.
for the entire season leading up to the finals.
Yeah, we should
Add
have.
up your entire season, 0.6 seconds.
Absolutely insane.
That's like one cheeseburger. Like when you just, you're like, I'm just going to eat a cheeseburger tonight instead of like going to the gym and having a salad or whatever and just
Or like
clean protein.
missing one line.
Yeah. It's
The pivotal moment on that too was, where was it? It was which event was that when Eris came? It was Mountain Creek. So the second round, when like the excitement on Eris in the corral when she beat Aletha, right? It was like, and you knew at that point, like it's on. And yeah, that was a good battle, and they did a good job of like walking that line where like, how do I say this nicely, right? Like I've said it before, like I don't want to see everybody like be so happy to come in second place, right? Like you have to have some like really, you want the win,
Yeah.
And they did a nice job. Like there was clear lines drawn in the sand. Like they were fierce competitors, but they were still very respectful.
Super
still like,
respectful.
Yeah, like some hugs in the corral and
Yeah.
stuff. Like it was cool. Like they walked that line very nicely, I thought.
Yeah.
So like kudos to both of them for that. It was not a easy thing, I think, to do at that age either.
Yeah.
Where, just like it'd be easy to let the competition get the best of you.
Yep, absolutely. And Meccano was solid all season, rounding out that top 3 in the pro women's. Any other categories stand out to you as like? I mean,
Well, the 17
I think I already know the answer to this question.
Well,
but
before we go down, I mean, well, normally it would be the 15, 16, but I think in this case, it's for the series overall, the 17, 18, like battle between Jacksononi and Max Abrams was just really fun to watch. And again, that Mountain Creek race was such a like a telling point in the season, even just the second stop. And so that was where we saw like that drama on the hot seat between them. And dude, 6 points difference at the end of the day. And, good job, Max. Like you beat Jack in the U.S. Open, but it just wasn't by enough. You know what I mean? Like just wasn't by enough.
I love Jack. He's another Jersey boy, so I got like high hopes that he's going to just have a long career and hold it down for the East Coast.
As long as he stops trying to do stupid gaps in bike parks for a long career, right?
But I will
Listen to me, Jack.
I will say, if I was Max, I'd have a hard time liking Jack because, like as a competitor, not as a dude, as a person, but as a competitor, because he's got a big personality and he comes across like flexing, like just being like,
it's great.
And if
good for TV.
If I was Max or anyone else in that category, that dude would have a giant bullseye on his back.
Oh, he does. He definitely does.
Like, so it would be like, I don't even care how I do. I just want to smoke Jack. Like, it would be kind of one of those scenarios if I was, racing against him. But that was exciting to watch all season long,
and if you look, because it's like, so just between the two of them, Max ahead in the first round, Jack ahead in the second round, Jack ahead in the third round, Max ahead in the fourth round. But when Jack won, he won by more. So it was like, I guess you could say like managing your bad days, right? Like, so, Max, if he could have been like less gapped on those days when Jack did win, it would have been a different, like, I mean, dude, that's one race, like couple places difference. The 6 points. I mean, and even so at the top of the scale, it's 2 points. So if you back out the Canadian kid who was in their series who got second in that race, like if you backed him out and went back to like your normal group of kids that were racing, like that could knock this down to a 4 point difference. And then it's just one position in a race pretty much. So it's cool. Luckily there's no money on the line for the AMs, but like there's pride. It's a cool trophy at the end. And
Yeah, yeah.
We'll see Max. So I guess I'm pretty sure Max is going into I think he ages out next year. It'll be interesting to see in the U.S. if these kids go up to the pro class or not, because like in our series you can.
Right.
So it'll just be like a kind of a process with the sanctioning body to see if they qualify. But I imagine both these kids qualify if they want to race the pro class next year. I kind of hope they do. Make room for some of those other kids in the 17, 18, and dude, go mix it up. Go jump in the fire.
Yeah.
So, and then Sarah Ligman, who you had before when we were doing our roundup, you had mentioned consistency, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she won the first 2 rounds and stayed. Her worst finish in the season was 4th, right? So 2 wins, a 2nd, and a 4th. That's super solid, super consistent. Charlie Bernard was also super fast, 4th, 2nd. She missed round at Big Bear, and then won at Killington. So, was because of the missing race, was a little behind on
50
points,
back,
but consistent, right? So, I don't know. Maybe she'll get a little taste in her mouth to go for a series overall next year.
Yeah. You can't miss events, right? So that puts you, the Ryan Dungey wins.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And then in those 15, 16, we had Cash, which I guess was somewhat to be expected. I guess you can't say that. That's a little bit strong because. Yeah, I don't know. Looking at the results now, he did, I guess, a pretty dominant season. So, but
yeah, I know. But this class is so stacked. I mean,
but Nick was still 16 points back in the end. So I don't know. It wasn't down to the wire. It was Cash's to lose.
Yep.
So, but he got it done.
Cash won 2 rounds, but Cohen won a round, and Alex Mallon won a round.
Also look at that. Nick, 16 points back in the mix, 2nd place on the season, no win.
Yep.
That's sick.
Yeah.
He's ready for it.
3rd, 2nd, 6th, 3rd. Consistent. This
Yeah.
class is exciting because it's sort of like watching Elite. There's Elite these days. There's no McGrath of the Elite class.
No.
Jeremy McGrath for the moto guys. I don't know. I'm sure everybody.
Why don't we just say
knows
Jet
him,
Lawrence for the kids watching this?
Yeah, Jet's got to do what he's been doing for another 8 years.
Yeah, but kids today think he's already done it.
Yeah.
Right? Because what we have a 5-minute culture. They have no idea what the number of wins. But we're turning into a moto podcast here. But didn't Jet pretty much when Babe Ruth pointed at the outfield, Jet walked in and pointed at McGrath's numbers and he was
Yep.
those are mine.
Yeah.
He's doing it.
Yeah.
So we'll see. But these kids are kind of the same when they're moving into the pro class. I haven't spoken with Cash yet. I don't know if he's going to do, move to pro in the U.S. I kind of get the feeling he's going to. I mean, I think it would be the best move, from my standpoint personally. We've seen him turn pro podium times.
Yeah, and he already knows what it's like to race to win. He's got that under his belt because there's a difference, in my opinion, about racing to win. There's a different pressure when you really know you're the guy capable of winning and you're racing to win. He's done that, so he's kind of checked that box. So
Eli Tomac just dropped that line this week in a podcast.
Oh, really?
I only race to win. I think it was Gypsy Tales.
Yeah. So he's got that under his belt now, so he knows what it's like to race to win, and he probably, I can't speak for him, but having at one point when you're aspiring to turn pro, you ultimately turn pro. When you're aspiring to turn pro, you're not looking at the people's times in your class.
Nope.
You get to a point where that's already behind you. They're not even a factor. They're not even in the equation.
Yeah.
You're only looking at pro class or elite, and then because that's all that matters, and that's what you're gunning toward, and that's what you're striving for. And I think he's already there, so I wouldn't be surprised if he moved up. I mean, because you go worlds, you're still going to be racing as a junior, so why not just?
Yeah, and who knows what's going to happen with the availability in 25 for these kids to race globally versus our series here, and where the value is going to be for them number wise as well, and then just like, what are they going to do when they can't access it? So, but who knows? That's a whole other conversation, right? So I was just trying to stop over Kaylee Stewart, last one. I think we were going to hit just in the premier class. Pretty dominating season too, a first, a second, a first, and a third. So just, easily walking away with that. Vicky's only keeping her honest though with, 28 points back in second place, but you're on the top 3 steps of the podium at every race. You're pretty hard to beat.
Yeah.
It's like nearly impossible.
Yeah. And Cat 1, 13, 14, some young guns in that class too, like Rio Boisvert, he ran perfects for the first half of the season, stayed on the box second half, took the overall. Eli Bundy, came alive at round 3. He got on top of the box, was right there. It was just, Alpine Leonard, just was consistent all season.
Big respect to that, the Boisvert family. Like, what a racing family. Like, the parents, they probably, I think it's got to be 40, 50,000 miles a year they drive to races.
Crazy,
it's crazy. All those kids, I see them everywhere I go. Everywhere I go, I see that family. And like, just quietly putting in the work, and it shows. I think that I can't remember right now the youngest one's name. Holy smokes, that kid is a peanut, and he's just chasing his older brothers and cousins around, and like, I think we're going to see some really good things out of that family. So I think we'll see some dominating race streaks out of them, if you will. And then Valentino Paleo on the 13-14 Cat 1 girls.
So factory looking too, custom painted lid, just always coming across with super big smile, such good energy, such good family support. They're always just kind of like,
It is impressive. We talk about like the decorum and like how proud we are of how our racers conduct themselves, both on like a manner side, but also on like a being entertaining side, right? And it's a fine line to walk, how do you be entertaining and be competitive, but then also be respectful, right? And honestly, she's probably leading the whole field with like her podium, just presence. It's wild. Yeah, it's kind of funny. I wasn't even going to talk about that, but since we brought it up, it's pretty funny. And then, Peyton Lee in second behind her, but no fourth race. So that kind of hurt her in the standings. So, because they were definitely 1-2, 2-1, 2-1. I mean, neck and neck. So, but overall, I think the points chases were good. And like we said so many times, like, dude, it's the first year of the series, so a lot of people weren't prepared to chase the whole series.
Right.
I think that guys like Dante and Jack, Aletha, all these people, like, cool to get that one championship under your belt when, like, I would say consistency maybe paid off even more than it will in the future, because there'll be more people being consistent. Like next year, I think we're going to see more people with consistent showings. So
let's talk a little bit about 2025. What's your outlook there? What's the plan? Give us the inside scoop, because I know you're the day that the U.S. Open closed.
Oh yeah.
You drove up to Mount St. Anne to talk to all kinds of folks from the industry about what 2025 is going to look like. Kind of like a recap on 24, but also like you're laying the pavers down for the next season. So let's talk a little bit about 2025.
Yeah. It does feel like as labor intensive as paving or roofing. It's like a physical labor job. Yeah. So, first, the elephant in the room, like, everything's changing. The whole landscape of our sport is changing with the things happening on the World Cup level right now. And like, it's a weird landscape, right? Like, there's a lot of people who are upset about it. I did an interview while I was in MSA, and I kind of, people want to get my opinion on it, which is interesting to me, because like, I don't have a horse in the race. Like, we're doing our own thing. We're not a feeder series. We're building our own series. And it's like, I don't want to judge on what they're doing. I think that some of the things they're doing are necessary. We could do a podcast on like that probably get some crazy comments. We'll probably do a podcast on like how we got to where we are in downhill racing, right? And you could look at like, there was a period where so many races, so many series starting with Norba had faltered around the world, and like Red Bull, to their credit, Red Bull TV, working with UCI, and normally I don't like advocate a sanctioning body being a race promoter, but like, dude, they saved the sport, you know, in the mid teens and like that mid school era when the bottom was really falling out economically, like after the big crash in the market and everything. And we got to a point where so many people are going to a World Cup that it's nuts. And so like I respect what they're trying to do, like to cull it and to be able to put out a more premium product in their mind. I don't condone their methods, you know, like I think that, being forthcoming with our audience, like with our racers is like a key. You know, a lot of people said to me at the US Open, like brand partners and media and stuff are like, it's just so raw. Like that's what makes Pro Downhill Series awesome. It's so raw. Like everybody here, everybody on the crew, you wear it on your sleeve. Like we know what's up. We know where you stand. We see that prize money. We know how hard that is to pay. We see everybody from Clay and Jamie down to their kids and everybody in the corral, from you standing there for an 8-hour day to Jess and everybody just like working so hard, and it's just so apparent, and we carry that right through to the end, and I think that what's happened globally right now is that there's just a lot of confusion, and it, right, wrong, or indifferent, right? Like Warner Brothers, World Cup, they're an independent company. They can do what they want. They don't owe anybody anything. But it's left a lot of people in a situation where they don't know what they're doing next year. And I think that's unfortunate because, I own a business. Like, we have to make plans. It's really difficult. And you risk going bankrupt, which is a horrible thing. So, like, the reason I went to MSA, like I wasn't planning on going to MSA, but I had a large handful of athletes, like, and just brands too. But the athletes, is first, the most important. Hey, you're gonna be at MSA. Can we sit down? Can we talk? Can we get a window into what's coming? They don't know. Like it's been 1 year of Pro Downhill Series. They don't know what's coming. They don't know what it's gonna look like. So we're just trying to give everybody the best like vision into what we're doing. And went up to MSA and sat down with athletes from Australia and the UK and Canada and the US, and it was pretty cool. Honestly, exhausting to do it right after the US Open. Like I don't think I've recovered yet. I had to do a couple site visits on the West Coast since then, and it's been go. But basically, like we're trying to like keep the vision will change. The vision doesn't change, but like what we can accomplish changes. We have to be conservative. We can't overcook this. We're now at a point where we, the Pro Downhill Series kind of has an onus to maintain the sports league we're building for these kids that are coming up and for these brands that are investing money and independent race teams. Like we have race teams like guys who have construction jobs and are dedicating money to trailers and to race programs and for their kids and trainers and all that. And so it's really cool. And so with that, what we're looking at is expanding to another event next year, trying to get the series up to 5 events, kind of like a controlled growth, not overcooking it. These events are expensive, like just do the math. Like registration fees doesn't pay the bills. Like it's part of the equation, but like these events are really expensive. We have a lot of people who have done a lot of like bro deals for us, so like we need to get our staff paid more. We need to do, more with, and not even just our staff, but like a lot of the people, like photographers, and there's been a lot of people who've done a lot of favors for the series.
You've got a lot of people who believe in it.
Exactly.
That are like the bro deals. It's almost like mega bro deals at this point. And it's great because people are behind it. So on that front, I do want to, it might embarrass you a little bit, but in a good way. You talked about some of the feedback you got directly, and I was kind of curious. I wanted to leverage AI, right? Like, what are people saying on social media about the Monster Energy Pro Downhill Series? So I asked AI, right? What's going on out there in the world?
Did you know this?
No.
Our filmer is cracking up right now too.
So I asked because I was kind of curious, and this is what AI delivered to my face. Okay. On social media,
I'm nervous.
people are positive about the Monster Energy Pro Downhill Series, praising it as a great addition to the U.S. mountain biking scene, highlighting the high level of competition and expressing excitement about the series' focus on developing young riders, particularly with the inclusion of the Fox US Open as a major event within the series. And then it's pretty cool, right?
This is unreal.
Yeah. And then it says
It's not real.
discussions, because there's discussion topics that AI will talk about, like, because they cluster them for you too. Pretty cool stuff.
Also, like, respect to, like, you're the older guy showing me what's up with AI right now. Like, I never did this.
Yeah. Well, I just thought it was cool, right? Positive impact on U.S. downhill racing. Many racers are excited about the series finally providing a dedicated professional downhill circuit within the U.S., giving domestic riders a platform to compete at a very high level.
Let's go.
People
AI.
are impressed with the talent level of the athletes participating to the and the close racing throughout the entire series. Excitement around the Fox US Open. The fact that the prestigious Fox US Open is a part of the Monster Energy Pro Downhill Series generates significant buzz on social media. There's more, dude. This is like good stuff. Appreciation for event organization. Users are generally positive about the event organization, course design, and overall atmosphere at the races. We talked about the vibe a little bit.
Wow.
And focus on young riders. Lots of positive comments highlight the series' potential to nurture up-and-coming downhill athletes. So, it's year one. And
That's sick. By the way, that's crazy. First of all, like, good job thinking of that. Like, I would have never asked, but it's really, honestly, it's wild because it just aggregates what people are saying to form its thoughts. So, like, that could have gone either way. That's
I've
pretty
been
positive.
kind of like studying this AI thing a little bit for my real job. I am not a tech guy whatsoever. I'm more like a clinical guy, right? In a medical field. And so it's curious because how you ask the question biases the answer. So, and there's like, because AI is starting to get used a lot in the medical field, and some of it's super dangerous. They call it phantoms, where it just makes stuff up.
Yeah.
Right? And then people believe it because it's supposed to aggregate, but it's only producing, like, it aggregates what's put in. So if it's garbage in, you get garbage out, right? But this is aggregating comments. I asked, like, what are people saying on social media?
Yeah, like,
not
there's no slant.
Are people hyped about it, or are people pissed about it? You know what I mean? If you ask the question a certain way. So it's just kind of cool. I was super proud for you and for everyone on your team.
For us.
I felt pride, too, because I'm a part of the whole thing. So I just thought that was really cool. And
I think like you, captain, and now J-Rod at the end of the season coming in, like, you guys are the atmosphere. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, most people just say Clay's running around working, but, like, you guys are the atmosphere.
It is more than that. You know, I was just out at a big event in Utah in the desert, like a week ago.
A non-racing event where people jump off cliffs.
Yeah, so I mean that was sick too, right? But there's certain things that because now I'm looking at it through a different eye. Like, what's it like as a spectator that's not a part of when you have the blinders on because you're a part of the production trying to get everything right. Totally. You see it through a different lens.
I love going to events where I don't have to work.
Yeah, it was really cool just to see it, and then it kind of made me feel like, oh wow, there's a lot of things that, like, you and your whole team are doing really well. And it's not just like the vibe and the hype, but it's, running an event, running it on time, like dealing with all the curveballs you get. But just overall, I thought that was really cool because everything that we talked about at the beginning of the year on these podcasts, and when you were really sharing your vision and what you were hoping to accomplish, I think it like catalyzed in that. And, we're on the way, man. Like,
even AI knows Pro Downhill Series is where to be.
That's right. So, so I don't know. I mean,
that's really wild. So I think to jump back to where we were with your question before you flattered me with AI, which I wasn't expecting, like, goals for next year is it's kind of going down a road of talking about getting our all the people who have put work into this, giving back to them, but adding another event next year. Just continuing to professionalize what we do. You know, like a lot of it, I mean, dude, the difference between the way we produced Rock Creek versus the way we produced the US Open, like, let's take a minute to just appreciate, you know, the we know organizational forces behind this, Jess and Jamie, you know, like, and again, they're going to be mad that I'm talking about them right now, but like we have
rock stars.
Yeah, and we've built like run of shows, and we've refined them, like simple things like no one will know like how important it was for us to program bathroom breaks for our timers in, right? Like simple little things like you don't know, and like we missed that in the first event. So like all that stuff. So like,
and just having those couple little spaces in between for reruns.
Reruns. That's a huge one. Like, have you been to an event where like a poor Cat 2-3 or somebody has to come down for their rerun after the pros race? It's not a good thing. So like figuring out how we catch that stuff and change that stuff, like that was like for me the real joys of the season. But into next year, we're going to continue to like refine that stuff, continue to work on that stuff. And so between the financial thing I just said a minute ago, these events cost a lot of money. The registration fees don't pay it. We have a lot of 2-year deals with you know, with great partners, right? Like Fox and Continental and Monster, you know, multi-year deals with these partners that have us, you know, somewhat locked in. Like we can't expand too fast. Nobody wants to see that anyway from a commercial standpoint, a marketing standpoint, because continue to improve what we do, add another event west of the Mississippi, obviously, that's the plan to balance out the series, and then continue to refine our content. You know, we have a great team of people, but man, they didn't even really have much leadership this year. I you know, in a lot of cases, just through our content team and, you know, Ben Wilson and Carson and Mangler and his whole crew, and everybody just kind of got thrown to the wolves. Like, hey guys, we're real busy getting this race off and making sure there's this, that, and the next thing. Like, just produce content. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like at the beginning of the season, that was literally their instruction. So just refining all that stuff, which will add so much value for the racers, right? Like when we can have a more refined content plan, when we can get our race coverage shows to be more timely with when they come out, which just it's straight resources. You know what I mean? It's all money and resources. It's bodies and manpower and money. And so those items are all like the big 25 goals, and increasing the prize purse. You know, we want to increase that prize purse every year. We got to do that. And, you know, provided we don't hit any brick walls with anything else we're working on, that'll happen. And there are a few other things we're working on I can't like mention yet, but we'll definitely have some exciting stuff to add next year. And then basically looking ahead to 26 is when we feel like that's our big move up, right? Like 24, we're out the gate. It was messy. You know, a lot of people
messy behind the scenes,
but like when people say, "Oh, they love it because it's raw," you know, it is, because like, you know, some people saw us go through some growing pains this year with the series, which was fine. You know, I'm okay with that. Like, there's like, it's hard for us to be embarrassed, right? Like we're putting on a show, like we're out there, we have to be part of it. So like 25, refinement, add a race. Keep moving, onwards and upwards, add value for teams, add value for brands, continue to have opportunities for fans to be able to see more online. And then... Well,
that's another big piece. We didn't really talk about it, but I know we have talked about it. You want all this coverage to be free.
Yeah, that's the goal. So, to continue, how do we continue to keep it free, right? And how do we do that? Well, we pay money to make it and don't charge money to watch it, which is not a good math equation. Right. So, but that again comes back to the value. We have to provide the value. And this is like, you know, it's funny, earlier in the podcast, you were like, listen, watch, subscribe, comment. Like, it does matter. You know what I mean? When people follow us, it grows. And we, you know, our numbers were honestly really good this year with, I think, just shooting from the hip, it was like, you know, from 0 to 5,000 subscribers on YouTube, only 4 events to work with, I think we're upwards of 400,000 views across the different content pieces. That's good for my take on it. You know, like we had low expectations. A lot of it was like, almost said a phrase I probably can't say on a podcast, but basically like, you know, a little bit of it was FAFO, right? Like we were doing that with some of it. Like we were just trying to figure out what works. And we were honest with it, you know, we told our partners and like, you know, Fox and Continental and Monster, like, and down the line, but they bought in on the rawness of the series.
Yeah.
But like, it can't stay like that forever. We need to continue to refine stuff. 25 is going to be a refinement year. 26, we want to come out swinging, hopefully like even bigger content plans and more events and more prize money. So 25 will give athletes and brands another year. Like aligning yourself with a series as a brand or an athlete is difficult. It just costs time and money. Again, everything's time and money. And so we're wanting to see more teams be able to form around this series. Give them a window into how we can work together. What can we provide them? These are what your costs are going to look like for the year with us. Because like, it's not free. Like they have to, you know, pay into the series to help make it happen. But we can't be one-sided. What are we delivering them? You know, from prize money to content, etc. So that's all the 25 project. And then 26, it's like, we're already doing a lot of work. Like I am working on 26 all the time now. Doing site visits for 26 already at venues, content conversations, partner conversations for 26. And, you know, never in my career of organizing independent races or just the US Open did we ever get that far of an outlook. So like, that's exciting. I think that's going to be strong. So
it's definitely cool. I had a chance to catch up with a lot of the, you know, I guess one of the cool things about being an athlete in an industry like mountain biking is it's familiar faces, you know, like it's the riders that I raced with back in the day are now, you know, running brands, running race programs, running products, running companies.
Somehow we've become in charge.
And I've had multiple conversations throughout the latter half of the year talking about their plans for investing in this series in 25 and 26. Investing in making sure their riders, it's built into their contracts where their riders are, this is a dedicated series, you have to do these ones because we as a brand, though they're not one of the partners currently, but as a brand, they love what you're doing and what you're building, and they want to.
There's been more, probably just equal number of conversations. Well, even more. Like more brands will come up to us and say, like, "Hey, we're in the industry. We're not in a position to partner with the series. We don't have, you know, the marketing dollars to do that. How can we be part of it?" And my answer is almost always the same thing: like sponsor an athlete. Sponsor an athlete. Like that's the number one thing you could do. Like build that next athlete. The other thing that's happening in 25 that's pretty cool with these athlete conversations is like some big name familiar faces who are going to focus on Pro Downhill Series next year that I think are going to make it really exciting to watch.
I can't wait until you let that cat out of the bag. That's
Well,
gonna be good.
It's not my cat to let out of the bag; it's theirs. But like, I had a conversation in Utah with a athlete that I happen to be a big fan of that's been around for you know, a few years in the industry, who's, you know, looking to shift gears and focus exclusively on the series because it's giving them what they want. Like they don't want to have to travel the globe and pay those crazy fees and do all that stuff to race. They want to do it here. So the mantra, you know, for the brands, it's like activate regionally, market globally. Yeah.
And I mean, I know you were raised in the Norba National Championship Series, and I know you've talked about you're not trying to become that, and you know, but
I got my ass kicked at Norbas. That's what I did at Norba National.
I know, but think about like they had the vibe. They had the vibe that you have at the U.S. Open. They had the vibe, like because the whole industry would congregate on that weekend, every discipline, which made it even bigger. But it was a big scene, and athletes from all over the world would come to race in the U.S. There was still World Cups. World Cup was still World Cup, you know. It was still the elite of the elite across the whole globe. But we had a tremendous percentage of those World Cup athletes coming to race here because that's where outside of that scene was the strongest competition. So it'd be really cool to see that.
Yeah, and I think we're going to enter an era where it's just two different fields of competition.
Yeah.
Like it's just going to be another series that athletes can compete
Yeah,
in, and it's there's room in our sport for two series,
Absolutely.
like 100%. Like we don't need to take anything away from World Cup.
Yeah. There's probably room for like half a dozen. You know, you think about
at least
every
a
large
third
continent.
south of the equator, right?
Right,
Because of the seasons.
right.
But yeah, you know, the reality is like there are so many athletes that are not reaching their full potential because there's not enough room at the top for them.
Right.
So that's the opportunity that we see with this new series.
cool.
But it's good. It's everything's looking good for next year. We're, you know, we can't get into it, but basically we're I think renegotiating with all of our venues that we were at this year and adding one more. We'll talk more about that in our next podcast, unless any surprises pop up. But every day feels like a surprise.
Yeah.
You know, it's just all day phone calls. It's like from venues to brand partners to athletes, just the question of, oh, are you relaxing now that the season's over, has actually become quite hysterical to me now.
Yeah, full sprint for
Yeah,
next season.
yeah. I think the most relaxing part of my year is maybe between like event number 2 and 3. You know, when we're kind of in cruise control in the middle of the season. Like right now, it's a sprint to the end of November to get, you know, before everybody kind of checks out for the holidays, to get so much set up for next year. And we want to be ahead of it. You know, like there was years where we announced the U.S. Open in like February. You know, we're trying to get this all announced in early November. So, fingers crossed.
Yeah, man. So, any other closing comments? Anything else you want to touch on?
Well, this was kind of a feel good, you know, thing you and I talked about. But like, what was your crowning moment or thing, or like what was your best? What was your favorite of the series this year?
I think probably one of my favorite things was trying to figure out and predict how your team was going to slay you after the race, whether it was going to be champagne, cake, I don't know. Like there's a little maybe not so public tradition after every race. Clay just gets annihilated by either champagne in the face, cake. I know Zach got you really good at Big
dude.
Bear, to the point where
The pie was brutal.
you
That
actually were kind of mad, but
Yeah.
you
well,
he
listen.
was
Anybody who has a 15-year-old son could side with me on this, right? Like
he was petrified of the wrath that was to come. And
well, dude, he hit me with the pie in the face like he was in like a Mike Tyson knockout game. You know what I mean? Like, dude, there's applying a little bit of pressure and hitting somebody in the face with a pie, and then there's a full roundhouse. Like, you watch the video, that kid wound up. Like, he went down into the cheap seats and came up with this thing.
that
and
was
I'm
a
over there-
highlight for him.
Yeah, I'm like politicking. I'm just being me. Like, oh, this is great. You know, like always trying to be like, you know, chatting with everybody. And next thing I know, it was just like the lights went out. And that's because the inside of my eyelids had whipped cream in them from that pie.
Yeah. So that was a big one. Having
Also,
you know,
screw you, Corey Fieldhouse. He's the person who orchestrates every one of those.
that's amazing.
We need to turn the tides. You know. I don't know. Hopefully, maybe at some point that'll wear out. I'm starting to get tired of wrecking clothes.
I don't know. Well, maybe 2026. But you know, it was the other piece too. Just selfishly, at my boys' race, their first downhill race ever.
That was
this year.
wild.
So I know one of them, you know, broke his collarbone. He was like doing really well.
Well, let's just tell that story because that story was sick. All right, so I'll tell it because since you were involved, I'll tell it from my perspective because I was watching the whole thing. So, first of all, the setup of that was so cool. You were just like, I think I'm just going to turn this California race into a family vacation. And you lay out your itinerary, and I'm like, man, like I'm just 15 hours a day on my laptop. Like I want to go with you. Like you went up to NorCal, you guys went around, you checked stuff out, you hiked, you rode bikes, you rolled down.
Went scuba diving.
Went scuba diving, yeah, and then you roll into PDS number 3 at Big Bear, like Johnny on the spot, refreshed, and I'm just like, you know, like a dog in the hot desert, just like, oh, like, gosh, everything is so much work. And we got Leif and Finn set up with the bikes, like. You got Leif on my bike, which is literally the biggest bike in the like ever made,
and he loved it.
And he loved it, but it's like an insurance policy with a bike that big. And dude, like the zeal you had for everything when they were practicing, and like, dude, you were just like floating. Like, it was great. You're like the conductor, you're down in the corral doing stuff, and your boys are coming through, and everything was awesome. Like, it was so cool. And then
until it wasn't.
Yeah, until insert broken collarbone here. And then so like
it still was a win because, you know, like, it's tough as a dad because you, especially for me, I'm not like I'm, I guess, multi-dimensional in what I do, but not like the stick and ball sports, right? If you want to like ride a moto or ski or surf or skateboard, you know, like, hey, I could maybe help or ride a bike, right? Like, that's like more my wheelhouse. So, and they're like playing soccer, golf, lacrosse,
your
football.
kids do a lot of sports.
Yeah, and so they raced BMX for a really long time. They raced really well, but they never raced downhill. So this was their first downhill race ever, and
to like, just like
get thrown to the wolves.
To throw to the wolves, but to also be East Coast kids. Your first race is going to be in Big Bear, which is, you know,
moon dust.
It's not like they're accomplished. Maybe it's an advantage to never have raced on the East Coast before you go there.
Yeah, I mean, well, elevation I think was tough, and I think that was part of it. Like, they took two different approaches. Finn raced smart, really like conservatively. His mission was go as fast as he can and be flawless, and it was his first one ever. And Leif went in with like, I want to win.
Checkers or wreckers, baby.
Yeah. So, and I think he was like 6 seconds ahead of second at the last split before he tucked the front wheel and broke his collarbone. But that was tough. So, but just having them there and kind of be like them, now they're actually like jazzed for 2025.
Sick.
So you're talking about your plans.
Sick.
And it's like, it's going to cost me a whole lot of money because now I got to buy 2 downhill bikes, right? And probably do a lot more traveling with them. So, but that's really cool because it's good family time. So those are
100%.
some of my highlights from the year.
Well, hold on. Before you finish that, a highlight out of a highlight was, dude, like the rest of our crew. It's like, okay, your son's hurt. You're like standing in that corral, like, I got to get out of here. I got to go to the hospital with him. And like the way Jess and Jamie like jumped and orchestrated, and then Deb came in and everybody like worked around you, but ultimately like you had to go to the hospital. And then it's like, dude, the spotlight turns on Jared Hansen.
Yeah,
and it's like,
it was cool.
bro.
It was so
and
good.
we like throw him the mic and he's like, what do I do? And I'm like, just do what you do, bro. He jumps in, it's like perfect. And that was like, that event really, so many things came out of that event. Like,
because that kind of adjusted our approach at the U.S. Open.
100%.
And it's just going to, you know, like, ooh, there's more we can do to make that experience at the venue even better.
Yeah.
And there's not too many races that I've been to that have the same kind of experience for the spectator, it's cool. And I think that's like a great example of like, oh, a little bit of adversity, we learn something.
Totally,
and it's going to end up with a better product, you know?
Yeah, like a lot of people might have crumbled under that, you know, and Jared just stepped right up. Matt was just basically, you know, like the
captain's awesome.
Yeah, the captain, like, I mean, dude, he steers the proverbial like MC ship all
the captain.
like all season, you know, and like he's so funny because I think sometimes we're just so used to what he does, we forget like how impressive that is.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, dude can talk about nothing for hours on end and never bore you.
I know
No, but for real, like
it's
impressive what he's done, and then for him to take Jared and just like guide him through that, and then all of a sudden those two were flying. Yeah. So yeah, it was great. I think that you know that kind of goes. A couple like my favorite things from the season was that finish line corral buzz at the end of every race. Like, dude, just like euphoria. Like, it's awesome. Like the buzz in the finish corral at the end, and it just builds and builds. And, you know, I think that the Cat 2-3 guys, they don't understand that they do this, but like, dude, they're the beginning of it. They're like the first couple pages of a book, and that finish corral, just like the temperature rises and the people are starting to gather around. And it's like, you got to see a whole bunch of those guys come through first to start to get the feel for it. And even like our timers and everybody, it's like everybody's kind of get going, and then we get to the end, and at all 4 events, like, dude, the finish at the end was sick. So good. And that to me is really special. Like, I think we do a lot to nurture it, like to have that, and now it's kind of taken on a life of its own. And for me, it's like I want to make sure we capture that when we start to elevate the content. Yeah. Like that emotion in the finish corral between the athletes is something that is hard to convey, you know, like, but I think that we'll get better and better at it. And like Mangler and his team did a good job this year of having like the camera right in the right spot and seeing it, you know.
Even that got better as we went through. Like everyone's better. I'm excited for 2025.
Yeah, and then lastly, just again, like shout out to the crew, the whole crew, like seeing the way we developed and like, how about Lloyd? Like, there's a guy who showed up just to hang out for the first race. Yep. And then wound up being on the crew the entire race or entire season, traveling across the country with us and everything, and like a missing link to the missing piece to the puzzle that we didn't know we had. We didn't know we were missing, you know. Yeah. And then like Corey and just the crew, everybody, like the whole crew is so amazing. But like, I have to give one special shout out to Jess and the U.S. Open, and that was probably like a big seasonal moment for me. So like, all season long, I'm, quote, the race director, and I'm in the finish corral, and like we're making sure things are executed well. And the reality is, like, she's there kind of doing everything, and I'm the figurehead, right? And it's just like what it is. And at the U.S. Open, like, I needed to be doing other stuff. I had to be out talking to athletes. I had to be dealing with a few other situations. And like right before the final started, like threw the keys, and it was like, Jess, you're in charge. You're running this entire corral in this race. It's you. And she was like, okay. And then it ran absolutely flawless. It was perfect. And then it just all was great, like the behind the scenes part of it, you know, like she did a great job. She always does. And then I called her out on the podium in my thank you speech. And then later that night at the after party, she got so mad at me for calling her out and thanking her publicly. So it just speaks to her character. You know what I mean? She just wants to be like, you know, this the person pulling all the strings and making everything happen, but she's not out there doing it for the credit. So it was good. That was like a special moment for all of us, I think.
Yeah, very cool.
But yeah, I know we talk a long time.
We did, and if y'all have made it this far into the podcast, thanks for hanging with us, because we, you know, love what we're doing, and I love being a part of what you're doing. It's your leadership and your vision that has created such an incredible team.
Well, it's kind of like, and, I mean, I think I got everybody out of the starting gate, but everybody's running their own race now. Like, our team is so good, and like the things everybody's doing now and bringing to the table, it's sick. And that's what we want to continue to work on in 25. Yeah. Like, how do I facilitate getting everybody behind the scenes, like just more tools and more resources to make the race bigger and better. Yeah. So
I think it's kind of safe to say that the commitment level, it's on 10, and
it's 11. This one goes to 11.
And you know, show up next year, come to all the events, tell everybody about, you know, what this team is, you know, what you're all doing, and you know, that whole like comment share thing, you know, do all that stuff. So
subscribe on YouTube.
Yeah, subscribe. That's a big one, you know, because we want to make sure that this content's still deliverable for free, especially the race coverage. I think that's where like most people tune in.
And that's where we're ultimately headed. That's the product we need to grow, you know. And if it don't make dollars, it don't make sense, Lars.
Yeah. And thank you all for the support over 2024.
Yep.
And
we'll be back in a couple weeks with another podcast talking about 25, and then, you know, maybe we'll do a little more podcasting throughout the winter as things start to pop up. I mean, our first event, you know, is the beginning of April, so like letting something out of the bag right now. But yeah, it'll be. We'll give them one to chew on. Yes, we will be back at Rock Creek first weekend in April.
Okay.
There you go.
All right, perfect. So we'll see you the first week in April, and you may hear from us before then.
Yes.
Until then, have an awesome winter, train hard, and see you in 2025.
Yeah, big thank you to everybody. Appreciate it. Lars Dog, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Beer and pizza me.
That was a long one.